now I'm moving us along chronologically to the Tang Dynasty, and I'm talking about a sort of a, I guess, much smaller issue comparing to what Donna just told us. And this is the Fubing system, and specifically the geographical distribution of these military garrisons in the early Tang. First of all, I would like to say a few words about the Fubing system. So this is sort of a signature institution of the Tang Dynasty. You probably have studied or learned about it one way or another. It was established in the Western Wei dynasty, and but it really became a national institution during the Sui and the Tang dynasties. And the in the Sui and the Tang, the entire Fubing system was made up of several hundreds of fus or garrisons, and each garrison has around 800 to 1,200 soldiers. So these soldiers were not professional soldiers. They do agricultural work. They're farmers for most of their life, and then they provide military service during certain time of the year. And they serve from the age 21 to 60. So they serve in the military garrison for 40 years, and each military garrison recruits new soldiers every 3 years. And the next point is sort of a controversial one. Some of them are required to go to the capital, actually, and to guard the emperor, and that's why they are usually known as Wei Shi, or the guard to the emperor, and this is the source of their prestige in the early Tang. But when you look at the major military campaigns, they were actually, even in the early Tang, not the primary source of soldiers for the Tang army. They definitely did participate, but they were very rarely the primary component of any Tang major military campaigns. And then they were abolished around the time just before the Anlushan Rebellion and replaced by professional soldiers. And that's one of the reasons that we think that the Anlushan Rebellion broke out. So we know of these things because of the research done by several primarily Chinese and Japanese scholars, and listed some names here, and there are more people. But the point is that most of them did their work in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So it's not a particularly trendy subject for people to study. You don't. It doesn't make you look good to say that I study the Fubing system. But I'll try to show you that it's actually still interesting. And in particular, relevant to what I'm doing today, this is a quote that is sort of based on the work that these previous scholars have done. And this is found in David Graff's book, Medieval Chinese Warfare. And it says that the great majority of these, meaning these garrisons, were concentrated in areas close to the capital, while vast stretches of central, eastern, and southern China were almost entirely without regimental headquarters. So this is pretty much what we think we know about the geographical distribution of the Fubing garrisons now. And what I want to do is to sort of put these systems on the map and see if we can find something that's different that we cannot find or cannot detect by reading the texts. And so I want to talk a little bit about my data. So the data are entirely from this book that's published in 2006. You probably can see it. It's called Tang Zhechong Fu Hui Kao. So what it has is essentially it lists all of the garrisons and then categorize them according to which prefecture or zhou it belonged to. And we have altogether more than 700 of these garrisons. So it's a sizable database, especially for the Tang Dynasty. And of the 700, more than 650 are datable to a particular prefecture. So we know which prefecture these garrisons are from. And then, and up to this point, I would say that scholars have sort of seen this. You can, if you have a fairly good grasp of Tang geography, you can sort of memorize most, or you can sort of know where most of the zhou or prefectures are from. It is really when it gets to the county level that I think human mind is a little bit stretched. I mean, I'm not doubting that some scholar, amazing scholar somewhere out there might know all the counties and where the counties are located. But I think it's fair to say that for most people, it's hard to process all of the data regarding a county during the Tang Dynasty and sort of project that mentally on a map, which is what we all do. So to put these on a map, and this is the map that's based on, I'll go back a little bit, the middle column, the data that's datable, that's locatable in a particular prefecture. A number of things that's sort of immediately clear. A big cluster around the capital region, so you can see this is Chang'an, this is Luoyang. So right, and I sort of see it as almost like a bird stretching its wings. This way, this is Turfan, and then this way, to the northeast, it goes deep into Manchuria. And the other thing is that there really isn't that much going on here. Very few garrisons in the south. And this becomes a bit more striking when we place it on the background, when we put the data of population in the background. And clearly, where the military garrisons were does not correlate with where the population were. In other words, the military garrisons were not proportional to where people were. So then we would, want to ask us, why do we see all these clusters around the capital region? And just for fun, this is sort of putting the data on the background of the Ming military garrison, the distribution of the Ming military garrison, which one would argue is a lot more representative of where the population were than the Tang. And this is where I think it gets interesting, because this is, remember the three columns? This is the third column. So when you put these data, when you find the data that you can find and locate on the county level, the huge cluster around the capital that we saw in the previous image sort of disappears a little bit. Yes, the capital are still important. Chang'an still has the highest number of military garrisons, but I would argue that what you see here is really this stretch of land that I'm stealing word from Nick Tuckett, that we can call the capital corridor. It is the place between Chang'an and Luoyang. And this is very interesting because here you see Luoyang is really becoming one of the many places where you have a lot of military garrisons, but not absolutely the center. So I think this is really something that was difficult for us to imagine just by reading the text. And here you can see the difference is actually quite striking. Same group of data, it all depends on what scale you're talking about. When you represent it on a prefectural level, which I think is closer to how we imagine the Tang geography because we actually know the prefectures in our head. You see the cluster around the capitals, but when you map it to a lower level, the county level, which is closer to where the military garrisons actually were, then that effect disappears. And this is sort of, I just wanted to zoom in a little bit and see where actually in these places are. And as you can see at the background, so here is the Qinling mountain, and then this is the Yellow River. Yellow River goes this way. And you would see that this is this sort of area that's like a triangle, the Wei River Valley, the Fen River Valley, and a part of the Yellow River Valley really accounts for, I would say, more than half of all of the military garrisons in early Tang. And the reason for that, I mean, there could be a lot of reasons, but if you remember, geographically speaking, this is actually one of the most famous places in Chinese history. This is the Xiao Mountain. This here is the Hangu Pass, Hangu Guan. So we talk about Xiaohan Zhigu, the solidity of the Xiao Mountain and the Hangu Pass. This is where Qin Shi Huang sort of drove into the 16th and conquered the rest of the country. This is where the Han Gaozu did pretty much the same thing. This is also where Lao Tzu went west, supposedly converted all the barbarians. So it's a very important corridor. So here, I'm just going to go to some observations that we can sort of see from these images. First of all, like I said, it does not reflect population density. And then second, and I didn't really talk that much about it, remember the bird? You can see that there are really two types of garrisons. The inner ones are like the body of the bird, the head of the bird that sort of is around the central plain, the two capitals and Taiyuan. And then you have the outer garrisons in Guangdong, in Turfan, in Manchuria. It's hard to imagine that they're performing the same kind of functions. And what people are doing a lot of times is to use the excavated document from Turfan and Dunhuang, because we actually have these documents about the what I would call outer garrisons to deduce what the inner garrisons, which we don't have a lot of sources for. And I think a simple map will show that that could be a very problematic approach. And then here, the third one is the importance of the Taiyuan region. I just want to go back here. So if you look at the Fen River Valley, and this is one of the things that I think has not really been pointed out, you see the garrisons lined up almost forming a path. And the end of the path is here, the Taiyuan region. And the importance of this place is, of course, as the origin of the founder of the Tang dynasty, right? And this becomes important in a little bit. And then the fourth one is, I talked about it. Instead of clustering around the two capitals, we see a cluster around the capital corridor. And I brought up his name, Nick Tuckett, The Destruction of Medieval Chinese Aristocracy. So in this book, he talks about capital elites. And then he says capital elites tended to serve generation after generation in offices of national prominence. Their counterparts in the provinces tended to serve occasionally and only in local offices. So this is a basic sort of distinction between what he calls capital elites and what he calls provincial elites. And then he said that no less than 98.5% of the extent appetite for national elites come from towns in Luoyang, Chang'an, or the zone in between, which is to say the capital corridor. And if you read the his book, especially the I think third chapter, he talks about the identity of essentially where you live and where you bury your family. So this is very much saying that the majority of the national elites are from the what we would call the capital corridor between Luoyang and Chang'an. So here we see interesting correlation that is probably not always intuitive. On the one hand, we have the early Tang military garrisons. On the other hand, we have the late Tang social elite. And they seem to occupy the same geographical space. So why is that? That's sort of the question that I keep thinking about. And then I think this quote does provide us a little bit of insight to that. So this is from the Cambridge History. Howard Welsler. He said that militia system, the Fubing, is usually assumed to have been officered by members of the old aristocratic families. Soldiers, both for the militia and those conscripted for campaigns, were supposed to be chosen from among the better-off families. And thanks to tax and corvée exemption, service was considered a privilege rather than a serious imposition. So what this passage is saying that for the military garrison members, to be a military garrison member is not something that we think of as being sort of conscripted into military service, sort of deprived of freedom, and it was actually a sign of social prestige. Remember, it was those people who were serving the emperor. They were the guards of the emperor. Even though, in Mid-Tang, you will have noticed in the sources that that exact term became something that you use to curse people. That's when their social status drastically decreased, and then you would call someone 士卫 as a way to say, terrible things about them. But it seems that that case is a testimony to the fact that, at least in earlier periods, that word was or did carry a kind of positive meaning. So here, just to regurgitate, we look at the area, which is the capital corridor. We have the early Tang military garrison, and we have the late Tang social elite. This brings me to the final conclusion or question of the talk, which is how military was the Fubing system? Was it really a military system that represented where the strength of the Tang armies were, or was it also at the same time a representation of where the Tang social elites in the early periods were? That's all. Thank you very much.